across the country that are going to impact our members, and how those races are going to impact Capitol Hill. As someone, as a former public servant, and we've got a lot of people that worked on the Hill before. There's a pride of being a former Hill staffer, working for a public servant, working for a member of Congress. And there's also, and I know folks that have done that before, have worked campaigns, and other people have probably worked campaigns before. And it's so much fun to really believe in the process, a foundation of our country, the ability to vote. And we definitely think there's for sure a high note here in electing good people, electing good members, and good public service. And that's what we want to basically just give an overview of some of the races that are going on, and we're going to break it down from region to region. And I hope this will drive some follow up after this. Hey, I heard you talk about this member or that or this candidate, and can you tell me more about that individual, or can you tell me about maybe some other issues where of committee jurisdiction or some other things that we're going to cover during this process. But we've got a great team behind us. You can see they all look really good today. They really have dressed up for this call, and so I appreciate that. And we've got the Blank Room team and the Becker team, Omar, Dave, Stephen, and Anthony Bedell. So I'm gonna pass it over to them, and I believe the first slide and I'm gonna pass it over to Omar, Dave. I think are gonna be covering things from here. So.
Yeah, thanks. Next slide, please. So the House map. All right, Dave, we got our work cut out for us here. All right, 220 seats right now for the Democrats. So officially, you're looking at the delta, right, between both of them, but it's really that's really a 3-seat majority right now. So it's really tight, as you can see, and there's 3 vacancies. That's why you get to right now, Real Clear Politics is saying, look at, that's amazing. 221 Republicans already that they think it's kind of in the bag, and 176 versus the 38 in the middle. The way I'm looking at it, I'm still seeing +5 on the ones that are completely, +7 on the ones that are going to definitely switch. But if you can see here on the left-hand side, there's 1 or 2 that definitely the Democrats will pick up, right? So that'll kind of give it a net of 7 there. And then in that huge swath of pickups, that's where it gets interesting, right? And by the way, the reason, normally there's a lot more toss-ups, but I will say this, redistricting, and because this is the first year coming out of redistricting, that number is actually much lower than it would normally be, because because of redistricting, the ability for the science, right, to really hone in on some of these districts has really shrunk the map. So that's why you're seeing really that little movement on there, and that's where the heart of it is going to be. But Dave?
Yeah, I find it interesting, Omar, because when you look at this map and you call it interesting, I look at this map and I call it somewhat terrifying from a Democratic perspective. The big takeaway from this is just the sheer number of blue seats you see in that toss-up column, and as well, in the leans GOP. Whenever you see that column populated more by seats in your color, that's a bad omen. And even the more modest projections, I think everybody's reevaluating those, considering the trends that have developed over the past 2 to 3 weeks that have kind of filled the sails of the GOP. That if anything, more seats that were once considered reliably safe Democrat have been reclassified, even in solid blue states like Oregon or New York.
Yeah.
And this is something which is forcing the party to put money into campaigns that otherwise they thought they weren't going to have to, which means they don't have the money to put into those, Republican seats or those toss-up seats that they think they could pick up. So this is, it's really a disadvantage in two respects for the Democrats right now.
Yeah. So we'll hand over to the Senate map and let Anthony and Stephen give us their words of wisdom.
Yeah, so Stephen and I get the hard one. If anybody tells you where they think this is going to go, they're giving you a load of what. It shifts by the day. You're looking at basically 7 toss-up seats that are going to direct the control of the Senate to the Democrats or the Republicans. And they are for a Republican point of view, they are tough seats usually for us to win. And also there are some candidates that my party nominated that made it tougher to win. But for some reason, all of these races are all in the margin of error, and that wasn't the way it was a month ago. So even some of these candidates that we thought were going to be lackluster have a big shot. And there was an interesting moment today. I was watching the news, and they caught Senator Schumer on a hot mic talking to President Biden, and he could heard to say that, and the one we'll start with Pennsylvania, that the debate didn't hurt us as much here. But then he said, and you couldn't hear the state is in danger, and everyone's trying to figure out what's this mystery state. And so that's kind of what's going on is with these state races are so much harder to predict as opposed to a specific House seat. But in Pennsylvania, that race is dead heat, and everyone's obviously aware of the debate and the issues that happen there. It's still, in my view, a lean D seat, just by the nature of the city, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. But that race is wild and unpredictable. And then as you shift south, I think, and I'll let Stephen take a couple of these states too. I think North Carolina has kind of stabilized, probably for Ted Budd, and then Wisconsin looks like it's going to lean for Republican Ron Johnson. New Hampshire is one of those races that I never would have thought was going to be close, but all of a sudden it is. And then Stephen can foster on the rest. Ohio is tighter than it should be. I mean, that could actually, Tim Ryan's a really good candidate that could shift. And there's just issues that all over the place of the unpredictability of what this is going to be the fun one to watch on election night. So, Steve, you want to comment on the other 3? Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. You're muted.
Wow. Okay, I was like a coiled spring and without the mute button. Okay. Well, yes, Georgia. Clearly, everyone seems to be watching that one because it was one that Warnock barely won last time, and it is one that clearly is very close and contested, and there seems to be a thrill of a minute as Anthony alluded to, the candidate clearly Herschel Walker seems to have a lot of issues that emerged here in the last few weeks that have caused some greater problems. But it seems that based on polling that a lot of people's opinions in that race, one way or the other, are baked in. I think generally, there are factors, early voting and other things that, and the levels across the board have been significantly up, and the extent to which, those races, that people voted early, it may have been a moment frozen in time, but generic balloting wise seems to be trending toward the Republicans at this point, where it was favoring the Democrats just a couple of weeks ago, month ago. And so that, let's see, what were the other 2 that we've not yet?
One quick thing on Georgia I read today. They are starting to see down there, because there's a governor's race as well. They are starting to see Kemp Warnock voters. It's an interesting trend where they're going to vote for Kemp and then for Warnock because of some of the personal stuff going on with Walker. So they've started to see that trend in some of the early voting.
Is that happening in Ohio too?
I haven't seen it written, but it's certainly possible. We
Uh,
have DeWine Ryan voters.
so what I saw today on Ohio is that DeWine is killing it so much that he's actually creating some some good after effects for Vance, and Vance needs all the help he can get. So that's kind of what we heard, what I heard today on that.
Yeah, Stephen, the other two are Arizona and Nevada.
Okay, yeah, Nevada is the one that as far as the current Dem seems to be in the greatest trouble, and has been viewed as probably the likeliest Republican pickup for some time. And Cortez Masto, there's a phenomenon that people have really been the media has been focused on recently, that the advantage that, again, outside of Florida and the Cuban American population, that it seems to be the Democratic advantage with Hispanic voters seems to be, it's still, decidedly with the Democrats, but the Republicans are really shaved in on that advantage. And Cortez Masto, who is the first Hispanic female elected to the Senate, it really seems to be at play in her race, and that still has yet to play out. But the polls have consistently showed Adam Laxalt with a lead, and it's getting right at the edges of the statistical margins of error. In Arizona, you have really kind of a volatile candidate against Mark Kelly, and it's at this point, it's a toss-up at this point, but it too, the polls I've seen shifting back and forth, but where Kelly was sort of on the safe side of that, now it really looks to be like a dead heat in terms of the latest polling that I've seen.
Yeah, and then there's some apparent sleeper state out there. My gut is it's probably New Hampshire that is suddenly in danger given the polls there. So that may be what Senator Schumer was talking about today.
How about Utah?
So that's a tight one. He's still up about 4 or 5 points. They think he's going to pull it out, but that came out of nowhere too. And so that's something that they're having to spend a lot of money in there for Senator Lee. But the guy, I forget the
Evan McMullen. McMullen ran as an independent in 2016.
Yeah.
Mormon from Utah, has a lot of credentials. So he's more of a libertarian these days than an actual Republican. But you can maybe say that about Mike Lee as well. So yeah, that's one that that McMullen is the reason that it's kind of propelling the Democrat to get into the race. Now, it may all be a wash. Now, there would not be a runoff. So it would be whoever gets the highest percentage vote. So they don't have the 50, only 2 states have the 50% threshold. And that's
there's some weird races out there in the governor's races where Oklahoma and South Dakota are suddenly neck and neck, which was out of the blue. Those are pretty red states. And the governor in Oklahoma had some issues, and that thing's tight. And then Kristi Noem, which surprisingly is only up by 3 or 4 points in that race too. So this is the unpredictability of running statewide, even in a rave race. Sometimes it'll, obviously impact these House districts more directly, but when you get to statewide, it pulls in all kinds of different voting coalitions. So that's kind of what you're seeing right now.
Well, one point before we leave this slide that I wanted to mention with respect to Georgia is Georgia has a unique law that does not apportion the win. You have to have 50% plus one. So there is an independent in that race, and it at this point, regardless of the Warnock, Herschel Walker totals, it seems at this point, based on the current polling that we've seen, that it is very likely or it is not, totally wouldn't be a surprise if neither gets to that 50%. And in that case, then the race, it's not decided until December. So they have a runoff among the two top finishers. This could extend, if you recall, in 2020, that was the case with respect to the Senator Warnock, as well as and Kelly Loeffler race, as well as Ossoff and Purdue. Or did I get that backwards?
Yeah, and put a plug for the December meeting. You'll be here in Washington, D.C., 2 days before that, or close to that runoff. So it'll be kind of exciting around
Well,
here.
that was great. Hey, that was a great input right there. I really appreciate that. And Stephen made a great point here. And just think of the mind of McConnell here. If what he's shooting for to flip the Senate here, he has to have the majority plus one before it gets to this runoff. Because obviously it didn't work out the last time.
Right.
I'm pretty confident it's going to go into a runoff.
Yeah. Next slide, I think. The South. So that's me and you, Anthony, right? So
Yeah. So
all right.
go ahead.
Florida.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say. So the way we did it on the state by state, like really the ones that are kind of like in the toss up. So these are the districts that are in NAWE members. So these are members in NAWE districts, basically, is the way I would put it. So as we go through it, if there's a hard underline, that means everybody's predicting that the incumbent usually is going to win on those. So if you see it italicized, like the Warnock Herschel race, that's where we're going to spend a little bit of time there. But Rubio is actually starting to pull away from Val Demings in the Senate Florida race, and a lot of that is driven. Again, you're going to see governors are actually going to be the ones creating, the head, kind of the tip of the spear that everybody else is going to fall on. Because right now, DeSantis is going to be spending close to $100 million over the next, 2 weeks now, probably half of that. So that's really helping Rubio and everybody else on their ticket. So we're anticipating Florida now will go to 20 Republican members and 8 Democratic members. And then I will just chime in and I'll let Anthony talk here. My Georgia theory is, if I call it the Bulldog theory, if the University of Georgia is number 1 still in the college football rankings, I predict Herschel Walker wins. If between now and the runoff, the Bulldogs lose, Herschel loses. You heard it here first, folks.
Well, who are they playing this week?
It doesn't matter this week. I'm talking for
This
the
week's
championship.
the Georgia,
Florida, isn't it?
Georgia,
Florida.
Tennessee's in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
the
Tennessee's
Saturday
in a
before
couple
the
weeks.
election will determine Herschel Walker's.
Go Gators.
The Gators, right. What stands between the Senate and Herschel Walker in the Senate is the Florida Gators. So there you go.
Anyway, I won't touch on Georgia too much. We hit that. Obviously, we have a NAWE member in the 1st district. That's going to stay Republican. But this is the one that people are going to be looking at all night on the networks, and then past a couple days after that, and then going into a runoff, et cetera, unless there's some last minute surge that we don't know about. And then I want to save time for questions and stuff at the end. But as you can see in these districts where there's NAWE members, they're pretty much staying with the incumbents as Real Clear Politics is. I know. I don't know if Andrew Sinclair is on now. I know the Port's not going to be in Bobby Scott's district, the new one, but they do have a tough race down there in Virginia too. That is a Democrat, and she is not looking like she might not make it. So right down there may be a flip to a Republican. And then another seat in Virginia in the 7th is also suddenly become competitive, which has caught people by surprise.
Anthony, whose district will the Port be in then?
Bobby Scott's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they cut Norfolk out of Loria's district and then put Bobby Scott down that way. And then obviously the Richmond terminal is McEachin, and then Ben Klein is the inland port.
Yeah, and the only other thing on this slide I'll mention is in Alabama, Katie Britt was a Shelby's former chief of staff. So, you know, Shelby, big appropriator, he wants to actually put Katie Britt on the appropriations committee, but it's not a, we got, somebody should tell Mr. Shelby it's not an Alabama seat per se. It's Mr. Mitch McConnell will have something to say about that. But obviously Katie Britt is going to be predicted the big winner there as well. So next slide, please.
Slide. So Carolina, same situation. You have a very competitive Senate seat. It looks like Ted Budd's going to be probably going to be the senator the way the polls look on Real Clear. And then the two incumbents are going to be in good shape in those districts. I know that Mr. Rouser is looking at bringing back the supply chain caucus, which will be very active in your behalf and help kind of grow that, which will be important for messaging and understanding things going on in the industry. So having him back will be good. South Carolina, Tim Scott's going to be reelected very easily. And then Nancy Mace around Port of Charleston and down around there. Well, she should, it looks like she's comfortably up, even though sometimes that seat goes a little weird, but I think she'll be in good shape. And then Omar, I want to take Mississippi and Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean, no surprises in either one. The senator's not up in Mississippi, so Trent Kelly, Azal should, you know, easy. And Bozeman, no issues there. So that should stay solidly Republican as well. So next slide.
I was happy about Mississippi.
All right, West Coast member states. You know, as I kind of mentioned earlier, when we were talking about the larger House map, you know, even now, you know, over the past 2 to 3 weeks, you've seen what have been traditionally reliable blue states like Oregon, like California, Washington State, that are all seeing some of seats that appeared to be relatively safe, you know, become, you know, less so and have the ratings change. I mean, in California, it's a pretty good bet that most of the incumbents, even though there was redistricting, which did rejigger several congressional districts, especially as you kind of see the 13th district, which used to be represented by Barbara Lee, and that includes the Port of Oakland. It's now an open district that is, you know, likely, you know, rated a toss-up and is going to continue to be. But recently, it looks like, you know, Mr. Duarte has a bit of an advantage. So we will see if that continues to build or not. The other, you know, seat of real interest is in the 47th district, where Katie Porter is running for re-election in a district that, because of redistricting, is about 75% new. So she's had to spend a lot of time just introducing herself to new constituents. But this is a seat that the Dems are really concerned about, not only because you know, she's been a pretty bright light on the Intelligence Committee, Armed Services, and kind of viewed as a rising star. But, you know, they're now really having to throw considerable resources into kind of shoring up her campaign to try and, you know, fend off Scott Baugh. So that's one that definitely needs to be watched. And just another one of interest. I mean, we do expect, you know, Salute Carbajal, who is the current chair of the Coast Guard and Maritime Transportation Subcommittee in the House, to you know, easily be reelected. And I would anticipate that Mr. Carbajal, depending on which way the winds blow, will likely return to be either the ranking Democrat on that subcommittee or the chair. And he's, you know, particularly valuable just because he also has a seat on Armed Services. So it's a real benefit to have someone like him returning, who knows maritime. Stephen, did you want to add anything else?
Well, it's California was one of the states that actually allowed a nonpartisan commission to draft its districts. And if you see that, if you've seen and compared some that if you're familiar with the term gerrymandering, where some of the districts look like squids and worse, this one, if you can tell, they did their best to sort of keep them geometrically sort of, solid, and to try to win where possible to take in like full counties and areas, communities of common interest, if it wasn't just sort of a geographic county line or city or municipal line. So this is something that could very well be I think ideally we're the non-gerrymandered, but then you have sort of states, Florida and others, where New York tried that, but their map was sort of thrown out and is subject to court challenges. So anyway, there may be court challenges to the district lines that might be addressed in future races and elections where some of the maps may be thrown out. But this is something I just wanted to focus on, that some states have gone to this nonpartisan type commission to come up with the fairest maps, and this, if you can tell, that this is one that the differences are stark in the shape of the district.
Yeah. And just one quick thing to add also, I mean, Alex Padilla, I mean, he is running, he replaced Vice President Kamala Harris, and he is now running for election for a full term. And, he does not appear to, be running in any headwinds. But that was one that I was kind of looking at since, this is really his first time, running for a full term. But everything appears to be, breaking his way.
Yeah, no, he walks in, I think he's fine. The only thing we follow sometimes on our side is just where the CLF, the Congressional Leadership Fund, puts in money. So I will mention this, 1.9 million is going to Scott Bow against Katie Porter. So that's very interesting. That's making it one of the most expensive ones. And the only other two that I think are actually going to be flips are going to be Mike Garcia is going to have a hard time holding on to his 27th district. That's not on that's not a NAWE seat, but that's going to be a huge challenge. And then Mike Levin's old seat is Mike Levin has they're putting in money against Mike Levin this time. So don't know, Biden won by 11 points. I don't know what the math is there, but I just kind of wanted to flag those two non-NAWE seats as kind of, there's some serious Republican action there as well.
Yeah. Next slide.
There was a Congressman Alan Lowenthal. He's retiring, and so he's a chair of the Ports Caucus. I'm not sure if there's been any discussions with who might be the next Democratic chair for that caucus or not, but we probably discussion later today.
A good question. I'm not sure if anyone has discussed sort of picking up the mantle, but that's certainly something if between NAWE and maybe AAPA would be sort of the stakeholder industry group that might be able to work.
The only thing I'd add it would be that Congressman Randy Weber, he's been a co-chair with Mr. Lowenthal on that caucus, and again has been generally one of the more I guess engaged members on the Coast Guard and Maritime Transportation Subcommittee. And I would anticipate that with Mr. Lowenthal retiring, that Congressman Weber would probably be in a good position if he wanted to be the lead chair on that Ports Caucus, that it would probably be his for the taking.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm going to let David take Alaska because he understands this crazy breakdown state and how this is all going much better than I do, but I'd just say on the slide, Murkowski is not a shoo-in. I think the Senate seat stays Republican, but that race is really close. And so I'll let David explain this whole crazy system.
Yeah, I mean, Alaska, I mean, first, I never thought that I would even be talking about, a Democrat, potentially being reelected in Alaska. But hey, strange times we live in. But the ranked choice system that was adopted up in Alaska has, really created, a new dynamic, and that, it's more than likely expected that, particularly for the, Mary Peltola, who was elected in a special election in August to replace the late Don Young, who served for near half a century, in the House of Representatives. She is again on the ballot and running against two Republicans, Nick Begich, who's I guess cousin was the former Democratic Senator Mark Begich from Alaska, and the former governor Sarah Palin. But under the whole ranked choice system, the top two, I guess finishers, if neither one gets 50%, it goes to an automatic, I guess, runoff election. And the way it's kind of shaping out is that even though the state has trended for a long time to be solidly Republican, neither the Begich or Palin campaigns are yielding, and there's a very good chance that Mary Peltola will not clear 50%, but will go to a runoff. And the polls that have recently come out have shown that she handily beats both Begich and Palin. In this instance with Sarah Palin, I mean, name recognition is not working in her favor, even in the great land. And then I'll also just say, Lisa Murkowski, she is, favored against, Chewbacca and Patricia Chesbrough. But even that's an instance where you have Lisa Murkowski and Mary Peltola saying that they're going to support each other's campaigns. So it's just a mixed match, happy land up in, up above, the 49th parallel.
Yeah.
And then, Anthony, did you want to add anything else to that?
That was a great explanation.
Actually, this is Rob. Let me. I want to add a little tidbit here on the Murkowski race. As Anthony had kind of brought up, and I'm friends with her niece. And in the 2010 election, there were actually some Republican groups that raised money against her, and she ended up losing in the primary, and then had a write-in campaign to keep the seat that I believe her father had previously. Her father was a governor, and that was because her campaign in obviously Alaska, large tribal area, went into a lot of these small communities and taught everyone there how to spell her last name, because when you do the write-in ballots, you have to spell the candidate's name accurately. And one of the major things of how she won that, just a little tidbit from back in 2010, not that long ago.
And she got the teachers too, I think.
Yeah, remember she tried to do the sticker, and then they said that was unconstitutional, that they had to write it in, because then you could have just put the sticker on there. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Patty Murray. Yeah, do you want to do the rest?
I'll comment on Washington State. It'll be easy. All incumbents will be reelected. So all members are there. Enjoy your current representation. I will add one point. If the Senate stays in Democratic control, Patty Murray will be chairman of Senate Appropriations. So that's a big deal for the state. And then Oregon, a similar situation, but there's a competitive House seat that's a toss-up. That is literally a 50-50 seat that's probably going to come down to not so much a recount, but that we won't know that probably for a couple of days. So that'll be one to watch. As one of those, where David was alluding to, was a little surprising and moves to toss-up. So that's one of those bellwether seats you'll be able to watch, as the election night goes on.
Yeah, and that's that was the former DeFazio seat. And again, it's an instance where apparently, as Omar's mentioned, I mean, the governor's race here, you've got an independent that's actually, really re-scrambling, that race. And there's also a sense that there might be some like Democratic governance fatigue among, the folks in Oregon. So it'll be interesting to see, whether or not, Hoyle, somehow pulls this out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
DeFazio never had an easy go of it.
Right. Yeah, because she's the labor commissioner, right? And
Right.
but Scarlatos, if you guys remember, don't remember the name, is the guy who fended off the attack in France. So he has, I mean, this guy has 6 rows worth of commendation, military commendation. So now, there's issues of misogyny and campaign finance and discretions and all other stuff.
That seems commonplace all over the country.
Right. None of this sadly is out of, but Scarlatos does come in with some really good headwinds, especially for an Oregon seat. Like, that he does have the veterans groups and all that riled up. So and Hoyle, just while she's been labor commissioner, right? It's like not a very high profile seat. So
Next slide.
Yeah. Next slide. Yeah.
Okay, I'll start off with this. Indiana, Senator Todd Young looks to be, in with no problem. In the House, however, this is the former Pete Visclosky district, longtime appropriator. Many of the members here, NAWE members, may recognize that Frank Mervyn name. He's definitely in need of a vowel, but an extra one at least. But he is the sponsor of the COVID presumption bill, the Longshore COVID presumption bill. He's in a real tight race, and that district it has tightened up, and it has been something that's been redrawn and to make it a tougher district. So. But it's viewed as a toss-up and listed here. Going to Wisconsin, we also have, and we talked about that race a little bit. One of the dynamics going on in Wisconsin, beside Ron Johnson and Mandela Barnes, is, and it looks that Ron Johnson, a month ago looked to be in trouble. He looks to be ahead now, outside of the margin of error. And but there's also a governor's race where the incumbent Evers versus Michaels. That is almost like a statistical dead heat. I've seen that kind of rotate day to day. Both the governor and the challenger Michaels are both under 50%, but they're both right at the 48, 49. So it is real close, kind of a pick 'em. And then very quickly, I will yield here, but there's no senator's race in Minnesota. There's a one toss up, and then interesting with the 8th district, Pete Stauber, he represents the Iron Range, and that was the area where for Paul Wellstone, former liberal, ultra liberal, by 20 years ago standard, was from, and that area has really shifted heavily toward kind of Pete Stauber, who's a very conservative member. Anyway, I'm sorry, Omar, I yield to you there.
Yeah, no, that just leaves Angie Craig. I was actually just in that district in Hennepin County, and I still think Craig pulls it out. I mean, I'd be surprised if Kistner can do that, but that is definitely one that's a toss-up. So,
but that's one of those ones nobody thought was going to be a problem.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, that came in out of the blue, and so Right. So, and it's the way, again, redistricting really changed the faces of a lot of these races, because a lot of these folks are no longer running in the seats that they have held, up to this point. So, next slide.
But
All right, which slide is this? 9?
This 10.
10. Oh, this is me. All right, Northeast. So Chris Van Hollen and yeah, Ruppersberger. No issues there. They should both walk in. There will be a new, after many years of Larry Hogan, there will be a new governor. But it does look like that will revert from Republican Hogan to the Democrat there.
Westmore.
Yeah, Westmore. I'll skip over to New Jersey because that's I don't see anything, any of these races that we have here. The New Jersey races that might, have some problems, or Malinowski might have a little bit of problems, but all the other ones I think will be solidly. And Van Drew, even though he was the one who flipped from D to R, he is maintaining strong as an R. So. In New York, no issues there. The 11th district is the one I find interesting in that Maliotakis, Greek, Cuban, Max Rose was the former Democrat. I thought before redistricting, Maliotakis was gone. Like no way would she ever hold that seat. But after they kicked out the maps, and it reverted to the old maps, Max Rose now finds himself, behind the 8 ball on that one. So we are definitely predicting Maliotakis to pull that one out.
But with that governor's race being close, you may see some races up there that aren't on the NAWE member list.
Correct.
That could flip because that thing is within 5 points. So
yeah, Lee Zeldin has really caught up to Holschel at this point, to the point that it is starting to force a lot of folks that were previously not too worried about it to start panicking a little bit on that one. And obviously that Pennsylvania, I wanted to leave the best for last here because Boyle, not a problem. I think he will definitely win, but that leaves, I don't know if any of you saw the debate this week, Fetterman versus Oz. I mean, I think the big takeaway is that, a lot of people felt kind of almost angry at the Pennsylvania Democratic Party for having even allowed Fetterman to continue with his race, that he really should have, either he should have bowed out or the Democrats should have kind of forced him out a little bit. They had an excellent House rep called Connor Lamb, that if Connor Lamb would have run, he would have walked with this race. And now, it's really given Oz a tremendous opening, because if you saw it, I mean, Oz was very well spoken. He's a TV personality. People know him. And Fetterman, to say that he's not coming across well is actually being kind at this point.
But don't forget, the one thing that he still has behind him is all that early voting occurred before this debate.
Right.
So he may have stockpiled a bunch of votes.
Yeah,
which makes still get him over the finish line.
Yeah, the unions are strongly behind him. So I mean, it's still not a slam dunk. And like I said, it just created an opening for Oz, right? That was really not there before. So next
I also
slide.
thought that he lived in New Jersey, Dr. Oz.
Apparently has houses in 5 states.
Oh, and Florida, and so
He should have moved to a state he could have won.
right. That's right.
All right.
Stephen.
All right. So Northeast here. So start with Connecticut. Blumenthal is still ahead, and I think everyone sort of predicts that he will be reelected. He's outside of the margin of error, but not by a whole lot. I mean, that race has tightened up some. I think Himes and DeLauro both are should be in good shape. Courtney it's a little odd that's tightened up, but that is the largest geographic district in the state of Connecticut, and it's quite rural, although it stretches down to Groton and and the electric boat, so you have a lot of maritime stuff, and it's often associated. He does have quite a large rural area that runs up through the rest of the state. So I think he pulls it out, honestly. He's a good, hardworking guy, but at the same time, in this volatile environment, you just can't take anything for granted. In Delaware, Lisa Blunt Rochester also looks to be like she'll do fine. Rhode Island, this is an interesting situation because they're running in literally a district that is kind of right at the margin. Rhode Island is one of the states that is right at the border of losing one of the two districts because of lack of population. And this was it's an open seat by Jim Langevin, was the longtime incumbent congressman, and he decided not to run. Right now, it is a toss-up, and Fung had previously run against Langevin, so he's, I think, a bit perhaps more well-known in the district. So this is one that's real close. Maine is an odd state to begin with, and I hope I haven't offended anyone in the sense that they've been pretty bifurcated at times, where you have an independent senator and you have a Republican senator, neither of whom are actually up for re-election. But even when the waves of previous political waves, they've managed to kind of cut their own course, and certainly Senator Collins, when the tide has been running out on her, has managed to get reelected, and in fact, even at levels that sort of surprised a lot of folks. So Shelley Pingree here looks to be pretty solid. Jared Golden, who is probably one of the most, I would say, conservative members outside, Democratic members outside of the House, and the incumbent is really sort of, in a tough district that, is really a close race. And, there's also a governor's race there as well. And, we talked about that earlier, that is that something that could very well, where you may have ticket splitting, but does the governor's race, outside of the normal environment affect, these House races in terms of some sort of coattail? And so,
and Poliquin was the former congressman there too, right?
That's right. And
right.
This is kind of gone back and forth, this district historically.
Right. Well, I'll say this. If Poliquin and Fung are winning these two races on election night, it's going to be a really long night for the Democrats. If these are the races that we're talking about on election night, like these are two seats that absolutely should not be in anybody's radar screen right now. That's where now you're starting to getting into red wave 35 plus seats especially, but looking at where the GOP super PAC is putting in money, both of these races are up there. So,
next slide.
All right.
Yeah, let me hop back in here. And first of all, this kind of regional synopsis and take a look at a lot of these races. I really appreciate. They call themselves a dream team. I'm starting to call it, when I hear them talk about certain races like this, and a lot of the program that they provide us and their institutional knowledge is always grateful. So, Stephen, Dave, Anthony, Omar, definitely appreciate all the work y'all did to kind of put this together. And this is just a precursor. This is just a pre-briefing on what is gonna hopefully set up in Spike here when we do our December meeting, December 14th and 15th, for NAWE and in Washington D.C. and we'll kind of have a post-election breakdown. And as was kind of said, you look at Maine, big state, or excuse me, small state, but if things do flip, you're looking at Susan Collins being the chairwoman of preparation, solid member. And so we're definitely keeping a track of all these things, and you're going to see this across the board. And that's why I think this election, as all elections, are extremely important because the margins are so thin. And I think that's kind of what Omar was alluding to of, is the House going to flip Republican and they've got a 5-seat majority versus a 35-seat? You look back at some of the, just brief history with Boehner and the issues that he had with the Freedom Caucus because he didn't have the votes to be able to pass the meaningful policy. He did a great job, huge fan, but you have those margins, and it's the same thing in the Senate as well. And as I said earlier, McConnell needs to lock this up if he wants things to flip. But you also look into the nature of Congress now, and everyone kind of is at each other's throat a little bit. But a lot of that's national media too. There's still a lot of bipartisan policy that takes place. We're a part of a lot of that bipartisan policy. Look at the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, amongst other things. But as my former chief used to always say, is elections have consequences, and I cannot talk about more with our members and others, and we all should continue to promote the right to vote. Get out and vote. Tell your friends to go vote. It is the foundation of our country, and it's really one of the reasons why we wanted to get out there and make you aware of a lot of these races. And before we open to questions and hopefully wrap up, I definitely, if there are any, follow-up that members have, hey, you mentioned this one race, we've got a terminal there. Can you provide more background? We're happy to do that. That's why we're here. And with that, I'll open up to any questions that y'all might have. You may have heard of also before that, Real Clear Politics is where a lot of people do follow. One of the best sources out there, bipartisan. I went through a deep dive the other night. My phone died, and I knew that was time to get off of it. But there's a lot of great articles out there. So open up for questions.
Right. Not that this sits on my desk all the time, right? But yes, it is kind of here. So any state, any district, we can kind of give you the skinny.
It usually sits on like a phone book to make them look taller.
Okay. Well, no one's asking a question here. I'll ask a question. So there's been significant legislative progress in the last 2 years, but in your opinions, how things kind of, and this is kind of fun stuff, right? For people who are inside the Beltway, but you're looking from the outside in. You're somebody who's working at a terminal up in New York or down in Savannah, whatever. We have a narrative and a story to tell about the importance of what we do as NAWE members. That doesn't change whether Democrat or Republican, right?
Correct.
And just as happened in the last 2 years, where there was a thin margin on the Senate side and a thin margin on the House side, things may shift, but we still have no matter what, and there could be a few new members, we're still going to have to make our voices heard here in DC, right?
Yep.
So I guess just to kind of close this out here, what's your final predictions, plus minus on the House side and plus minus on the Senate side?
No one's going to answer that question. There's a bipartisan committee, Thomas. I told them all they don't give any predictions.
Right.
But I will say I sit with the team with Rob and then David and Steven and Omar and then both of our firms. We're well positioned for whatever happens, and we'll be ready to go and introduce all of you to new members, old members, and we'll be able to take on whatever this new Congress looks like. So I think that's the message I would give.
The reason we went to exhaustive details in the NAWE districts is because we really wanted you all to see what's going on in your district. And if many of you have not figured out who your congressman is or who, which member of Congress is representing you, I hope you saw them in the slide, and that's the thing, because we can only be as effective as you all also reaching out to these members, also saying how important it is. And the ones we're really trying to get, is, listen, we're always about incumbent protection at the end of the day, right? We work with a lot of these members and we want to keep those relationships intact. It's really, the open seats and stuff, but this was really more of an educational experience. We just wanted you to, as we went through all the districts and all the NAWE districts, to show you who your possible member of Congress is, so that you can start doing a little bit of research yourselves, or ask us some questions about that. So that's what this exercise was more about, is to kind of, to give everybody, let them see what's going on in their district.
Yep, and you'll have an opportunity. All of our members will have an opportunity to see these guys in action on the stage for kind of a post wrap up after election, as we look forward to the very great 118th Congress.
And we'll let you know our predictions then.
David's got a question.
Yeah, real quick question for Steven. He said Mervin, if Mervin doesn't get reelected, what happens to that bill 3114?
Well, at the end of the Congress, regardless, all of the bills that have not acted upon are, basically die. And so that they would have to then be reintroduced and start over again. So we're at the end of this midterm, is the end of the 117th Congress. We begin a new Congress. Each Congress is 2 years, and there's a first session and a second session. But at the same time, a bill only lives as long as that 2-year period during that Congress. So it kind of wipes the slate clean. If for some reason he gets reelected, he may choose to reintroduce it. But at that point, the clock has expired on him.
Thank you.
We're hoping it dies a slow death in the 117th, though.
Amen.
Slow and painful. It has been painful.
We appreciate that question, though, David.
Thank y'all.
Anything else from anybody? Like I said, NAWE annual meeting December 14th and 15th in DC. You should have some information in y'all's inboxes about this. That Victoria and Heather and Meg and Jean are also on our team. We've got a great program coming together. We've got a security panel, education workforce. Commissioner Bentz will be there. Jeff Vogel, this team. We've got a crisis communication workshop. So a number of great speakers, and be a great program. And as we said, it will still kind of be in that election season. The CR runs till December 16th. This event's 14th and 15th. It's going to be a hot time to be in DC, and we hope everybody will be there in person. Well, great. Well, look, we appreciate everybody being on here. Dream Team, thank y'all so much, and we'll see y'all soon.
Right
Thank
on.
you, guys. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good work.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.